Hey, I'm Lewis, welcome to UK Wildcrafts. So this is part one of foraging in May from my monthly foraging calendar series. So May is a transitional month. By the end of the month you'll really start to see some of the summer wild edibles starting to grow. This is a lilac, Syringa vulgaris. It's a shrub or small tree that can be found around field edges and hedges, and it's planted in gardens and villages. It's non-native to the UK and it's a member of the olive family. The edible flowers usually appear around early May. They're small four-petaled flowers that range from light pink to a deep purple, and there are also white varieties. They have a nice sweet smell and they grow in densely packed panicles that are cone shaped or narrowing towards the end. And these panicles are quite often pointing upwards. The leaves are vibrant green and are oval or heart-shaped. Only the flowers are edible. They can be used to make lilac lemonade, lilac ice cream, lilac honey, and many other things. And they're also just nice sprinkled onto a salad. Whatever you're using the flowers for, you want to remove them off of the green stem because the stem is quite bitter. This time of year is great for collecting thistle stems. So if you're not a fan of bitter tasting greens, then thistle could be a good choice for you. So lots of plants use compounds such as tannins to make them too bitter to eat, but thistle relies on its spines instead, so no need for tannins. It's got a mild, sweet flavour. All thistles are edible, and all parts of thistles are edible, but you do need to trim them to get rid of the spines. This one here is a spear thistle, and this is in perfect condition for harvesting. So I don't usually bother with the leaves of thistles, although the midrib is quite good if you trim it back. The best part of the plant is the main stem. So it's the flowering stem, but you want to get to it before it flowers. So like this is perfect. If you prepare it while it's in situ, it's much easier than taking it home. Just get your knife and trim off the leaves and peel away at the main stem. And then just cut it off at the base. The good thing is about preparing it in situ is that any of the trim or waste will just go straight back into the environment and compost down rather than going into your wastage at home. But generally I'll just take these leaves home and take out the midrib and use those, and any other trim wastage I'll just chuck into my stock pot with any other veg trim. So that's a really good wild edible, and you can find these in really large numbers, so you can collect quite a lot of them. So the bit at the base of the plant can be a little bit fibrous and tough, but up the top near the flowering end of the plant is really nice, tender and sweet. It's very similar texture to celery, though it has none of the bitterness. It's just very sweet and mild. This is lady's smock, Cardamine pratensis, also known as cuckoo flower. It's a perennial edible herb that's native to the UK and Europe. It's a member of the brassica or mustard family. It especially likes damp locations, so damp meadows and fields, as well as ditches and streams, and you'll also find it in damp woodlands. It flowers through late spring and early summer. Its basal leaves and its upper leaves look quite different, but they follow a similar growing pattern. So they're compound leaves, which means each leaf is made up of smaller leaflets. So this is all one leaf here, but it's made up of smaller leaflets. So they have opposing leaflets and then one terminal leaflet. The basal leaves are quite rounded, and they can often be found all year round. The stem leaves have much narrower leaflets, but they also have opposing leaflets and then one terminal leaflet. The flowers are delicate and have 4 petals, which are a pale pink and usually veined. The flowers, stems and leaves are edible. If you like strong mustardy flavours, you'll love this plant. It tastes just like wasabi. The bright green growth here is another lovely edible that's at its best in early May. These are spruce tips. These ones are Norway spruce, which are non-native to the UK but very common. And it doesn't matter too much on the type of spruce because all spruces are edible. So to tell it's a spruce, just look at the needles. And you see they grow around the stem, not in a flat plane, but all around the stem. And the needles attach singularly to the stem, rather than pine where you might get 2, 3 or 5 needles attaching to a single point. With spruce it's just one needle. Where the needle attaches to the stem, there's a little wooden peg, like a wooden projection, and this will stay intact when you take the needle off. So the needles have a roughly square profile and you can roll them in your fingers. And also they're fairly stiff needles and they've got a sharp point at the end. And they've got quite a strong resinous smell when you crush them. The needles can be harvested any time of year. They're good for making tea. But this time of year we're after these young tips that are lighter green. So this is the New Year's fresh growth. And these are just really soft, and these can be eaten raw. They've got a lovely citrusy flavour. So you want them just about this sort of stage where they're just breaking free of their papery sheath, like this here. Yeah, and these are delicious. You get absolute masses of them this time of year. So these are good infused into sugar. You can also make spruce shortbread with them, and they're good to put into drinks to get a nice citrusy flavour. So always pick from mature trees and don't take too many from any one tree. Wow, yeah, really sharp citrusy flavour with a little bit of a resinous aftertaste. So these are really high in vitamin C, so you don't want to eat too many of them. This is sweet woodruff, Galium odoratum, a perennial herb that's native to the UK. It's a woodland species, and you'll find it grown especially in ancient woodland, and it likes a similar habitat to bluebells, so old, partially shaded, deciduous woodland. It forms creeping mats grown along the woodland floor. It looks very similar to cleavers, and they are very closely related. So like cleavers, the leaves of sweet woodruff grow in whorls around the stem in sets of 6 to 9 leaves. But unlike cleavers, the leaves and the stems of sweet woodruff are smooth and hairless. They don't have the hooked hairs like cleavers do that catch onto your clothes. And sweet woodruff has more vibrant, glossy leaves. When crushed, you'll get a smell of somewhere between vanilla and almond. The flowers appear from early May, and they form small clusters at the top of each stem. They're white and they have 4 petals. It's best to pick the plant just before or during its flowering, because after it's flowered, they start to lose the flavour. Sweet woodruff has a lovely, strong flavour, somewhere between vanilla and almond. So it can be infused into alcohol or infused into milk to make a vanilla flavoured custard or panna cotta. Also works really well as a syrup for pancakes. The flavour isn't great raw, it's better cooked or dried. The flavour is intensified when dried, but this comes with a warning. It contains a chemical called coumarin, which gives it its vanilla flavour, but when not dried properly, it can be converted into dicoumarol, which is toxic. So if drying, do it in a dehydrator and store it in an airtight container. Also, don't consume too much of this plant. Coumarin can be toxic if consumed in large doses, but in small amount, this is a really good herb for flavouring. Back in March we looked at the young leaves of hawthorn as an edible. Now in early May we can also eat the blossoms. So the flowers are good just as they've started to open, like this, or the buds like this. You can eat them once they're fully open, but they do go a bit bitter. They're best eaten raw or can be made into a syrup. They've got a slightly sweet almondy flavour. The flowers have 5 white petals, sometimes with a bit of a pink tinge to them, and when they're fully open they've got a sweet floral smell. You can see this tree here is absolutely loaded with buds. Just be careful of the very sharp thorns. Wild garlic we've looked at a few times already. Now in early May it's starting to flower, and these flowers are also a good edible. You can eat them raw, just sprinkled into salads. My favourite use is to dehydrate them and powder them, so you've got like a garlic seasoning. So the flowers grow on a very thin stalk, and you get bunches of the flowers. Each flower has 6 white petals. So another plant that people get confused with wild garlic, and I get sent quite a lot of pictures asking if it is wild garlic, is just on the other side of the path here. These are wood anemones, and these are mildly toxic. Apparently they can be edible with being processed, but I'm not too sure on that. I've never tried. But you can see they're white flowers, but they don't really look similar. Each flower of the wood anemone is quite a lot bigger than the individual flowers of the wild garlic. And also the leaves are very different. The wild garlic leaves are narrow and with an entire margin, and the wood anemone leaves are divided. They look very different to wild garlic. And of course the smell as well. Wild garlic has the onion smell. Wood anemones don't really have a scent. The garlic smells even more noticeable once the flowers open, and you'll often smell a wild garlic patch before you see it when it's in flower. Lime leaves are another good edible tree leaf. This isn't the citrus lime tree, but it's the lime tree also known as the linden tree. There are 3 types of lime or linden tree. You've got the common lime, the large-leaved lime, and the small-leaved lime. This one here is a small-leaved lime. You can tell because of all this suckering growth here. Loads of vertical stems from the base of the tree. It doesn't really matter which one of the 3 you have, they're all very similar looking and they're all edible anyway. Lime trees can be found in towns and parks, and they're an indicator of ancient woodland, so if you find some in the wild, it's probably an ancient woodland, like where I am here in South Wales. The lime have heart-shaped leaves that come to a pointed tip. They've got a nice sweet flavour, and they're good as a salad green. They're quite mucinogenic, which means they have like a slimy texture, which might not sound very nice, but they're very good for a sore throat because they're quite soothing. So these will be good if you've got a bit of a bad cough. As with all edible tree leaves, the younger and more translucent the better.